Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm looking forward to this one personally today. I'm going to learn a lot from it. This is on planting, amending, and composting. So we're going to be covering some really practical stuff with Andy and Peg, who are back with us today. For those of you who attend these classes regularly, welcome back. We're glad to have you. And for those of you who are new, welcome. Just a couple of things for you guys to know before we get started. Okay, and I can see our numbers going up. So that's what see if we need to wait a minute for some people to log in, but we're going up quickly. For those of you who are new, this is a webinar format, not a meeting. So it's a little bit different than what you might be used to. We can't actually see you or hear you during this class. So if you have questions, you'll hit your Q&A box in the Zoom menu, type your questions there, and I'll be monitoring those during the class for when Andy and Peg are ready to take questions. If you have any other issues during the class, please feel free to send me a chat and I can help you out with that. We are recording today's class, so that will go out tomorrow to everybody who is logged in today, along with a coupon. If you have to leave early for any reason, you'll still get that email tomorrow, or feel free, of course, as always, to hit reply on your confirmation email and send me a note, and I can follow up with you by email as well. I think that about covers everything. For those of you who don't know Andy and Peg, I know they were on just a couple of weeks ago talking about container gardens. Peg has been with us for many years teaching and working in our annuals department, and I believe in some other locations as well over the years. A little bit of everything. She has been teaching. She teaches on all kinds of topics. She was on our Gardening Advisor television program back when we had that. Really, she needs no introduction, I know, for most of you. Andy works at our Fair Oaks store as well. He does a lot with the materials that we're going to be talking about today. So I'll probably let him discuss that a little bit more, but I think that is about it. So Andy and Peg, I'm going to let you guys dive in. Thank you for being with us today.
And thank you, Sally.
Thanks, Sally.
Thank you all for joining us, because fall is for planting. And Andy, who I'm very pleased to have on today, because he's a wealth of information for all of us. And it's so nice to be joined by this younger generation and all the interest and enthusiasm that he has. He's going to share with you today. But we want to set the stage first for fall is for planting.
That's right.
Because we really need to emphasize a few of those things. It's not just the additives that Andy is going to talk a lot about, but it's the proper planting and especially the proper watering. Okay,
that's
so
right.
Andy will get started, because what sort of inspired all of this was I have a small area in my garden that had to be redone. I'd lost a huge old oak tree there, and for whatever reason, something underground, whether it's a little underground stream or what, it was wet in just that area, too wet. Okay, so we installed a French drain, and hopefully it's going to work, and I sort of revamped that area. And actually, this is something that I'd like to talk about in the future, is how you revamp an area to have interest in all seasons, because that's really what I'm geared for here. Because I have the bulbs, which time to plant those.
That's right. It's fall time, right around the corner.
And there are already bulbs here. I added some allium, some of the big allium. And there'll be existing azaleas in bloom. There'll be a sweet shrub, Calacanthus, in bloom in the spring. And then followed on by other things, a spirea, which we will talk about. So this first picture is that area, okay? And you can see we put in the French drain, and then I decided to throw in a couple of these spirea. And let's go to the next one, honey. I think it shows the spirea going in. Okay, this is after I had put in the spirea. And it's a beautiful golden color. It has mixed color within the foliage all season long, blooms in the spring. And I decided that that would be a great addition to this seasonal garden, because as soon as the azaleas are going out, this will come in. I added in some of the summer allium, which I absolutely love, and the wonderful Ophiopogon that I really do enjoy massing. Actually, black mondo grass is the common name. But going into the next one, okay, Andy, we need to talk about proper planting. I decided to pull that spirea out so that you could see the root structure on there. This one doesn't have a heavy one. Sometimes you'll open up some of these container plants and that root structure will be much heavier, or it may be going around in circles. And if we bring up the next picture, so that's how it was when I took it out. I decided to take the hose and hose out some of the existing soil in that container so that you could see those roots more carefully. I want to take it from some of the proper planting there.
Yeah.
Andy.
Yeah, and hopefully that's coming through for you guys. The second pictures, you can see that root system, those bright roots running through there. And as Peggy had just stated, that she had used water to kind of to clear so that we can see that. Most of us may or may not know, but how important that root system is to the vitality of the plant, and getting that plant in the ground appropriately, not just with certain amendments, but also, for example, when we get a container plant, we want to put it in the ground. We do want to expose those roots. It's not a process where we need to be rough and really kind of shred through this root system, but we want to gently expose and free some of these roots so that they are more apt to take hold in the ground and where we're planting them to really benefit the plant and take off. So hopefully everybody's seeing that. Can we just click back one picture, Danny? And so you can see where when this first came out, the roots weren't as exposed. There's a couple different ways that we can kind of help free these roots. Whether you're using water to rinse off some of the material that's lodged in. We don't need to get all of the material free. Once again, we do not need to just get into the central area of this entire root ball and shred it up, but we do want to free and expose some of these roots coming down. I like to kind of use the expression of fingers through the hair a little bit.
Well, that's a good expression.
Whether you're using your hands or gently using even a pruner to gently kind of pull through and release some of these roots are just going to really help this thing take hold when we plant it. We've got a planting guide here at Merryfield that illustrates and speaks to how we would generally plant any plant material in the ground, both in the height in which it is planted in, so that it's sitting in the ground appropriately when we get water, that we are not creating a valley for it to catch all the water and all those things.
Right.
So
yes, if we talk about this, we're talking about container plants too. We're
That's
not
right.
talking about the balled and burlap, because that's different. They are dug with soil around them. These are dug with potting soil, and it's
Absolutely.
very different. And while I washed some of that away, the primary reason was so that you could see those roots and that you need to lift them out a little bit and loosen them up. And sometimes they're denser than that, and you do have to cut some of them away. But planting it at the proper height, which is slightly above, don't dig your hole any deeper than the root ball because you don't want it to settle too low. And then the next most important thing, and I know David Yost and a couple of them downstairs have asked us to please talk more about proper watering. A lot of people think that we, right in this area, have had a lot of rain in the last 2 months. But for me and for a lot of people, that really is not the case. We've had some light showers and had one good rain, but it's so dry right now at my house that the ground is cracking, literally. So when the situation is like that, you really have to pay more attention to the watering process. However, even if we'd had adequate rain, you still need to be careful about the watering. So we talked about some of this. Want to discuss the actual process by which we do our additives and which ones are adequate, but also how we water?
Yeah. I like to refer to watering right off the bat generally as, instead of small amounts of frequent water, we would love to have larger, heavier watering infrequently. We really want to saturate that entire root system and make sure all the soil around is 100% saturated. As Peggy said, paying attention to watering is just so important. Some people get through the heat of the summer and say, oh, it's been very hot, and they always relate that to paying attention to watering. But also these windy, even cool days can really sap the ground of moisture, and that plant needs that water in its cells to do what it does to become strong and vibrant. When we water any container plant, it's got to get thoroughly saturated. And if that container plant goes in the ground, nothing has changed. We really want a thorough amount of water on that container. You can probe into the ground if you need to.
Actually, I like to kind of do it in the same area. If you're unsure as to whether it needs a deep watering, is to actually, you can trowel a small area, but you would do that where that root ball from the container meets the existing soil. That's where it's the container thing that's likely to dry first. Okay,
that's right.
And so you can indeed feel with your fingers down in there and determine, do I need to deeply water this? Because it takes a little bit longer than you might think. I can't tell you how many minutes to stand there and water, because your soil situation is going to vary. Okay, just learn what it takes to get that entire root ball soaked. But what we haven't done, and we want to do throughout this program now, is also to talk about the various products that we have. We were feeling that sometimes we might even be confused. Which one do I recommend? Because you ask us which ones do we recommend. And we have a lot of very good products, and a lot of them are very interchangeable. But we picked some that are favorites for different situations. And Andy's very good at explaining those. So let's talk about the ones that I might have used in this particular situation, okay, where we're planting that plant. Because we've got some other situations, we're going to talk about other things, but there are some things that we really feel are excellent products to use when you are planting in the ground. Okay,
I'm going to bring this first one over and see if everybody can see that. There might be a little glare. That is Leaf Grow. It is a compost material made out of leaves, if you could just about imagine with the name like Leaf Grow. Leaf Grow is one of those things that's versatile. Like Peggy says, we've got several things here that we can use to put plants in the ground. Great thing about Leaf Grow is it's just a natural leaf compost product that can be used to put plants in the ground. It has many different uses. You can use it on your lawn as a top dressing. You can amend soil to lay seed or sod, but we'll stick to plants. So we can absolutely use a product like Leaf Grow to put trees, shrubs, flowers in the ground. It always is good to know that it's nice to mix a amendment like this with existing topsoil. Your existing topsoil is going to hold structure and keep that plant upright. This Leaf Grow is going to add nutrition and help soften up some of that if you're in Northern Virginia with us, that really thick red clay soil that is great for its mineral content. That's why we're so lush out here. But man, is it hard to dig a hole in that red clay. And this leaf grow is a wonderful way to amend the soil to lighten it up a little bit and add great nutrition.
I use leaf grow a great deal, and yes, you were right. This is one of the most versatile products that we have, because and so far, in spite of the fact that it's very dry, I have been sprinkling my baby grass. But when I put the grass seed down, I put leaf grow on top. So I recommend this product.
Great product, absolutely.
But you also have, are we ready? Not for the planting? Yeah, that's Merryfield.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're ready.
We're ready.
The next one, everybody, and once again, I'm kind of tilted, so the glare. This is our Merryfield Planting Mix. This is a beautiful product that we formulated to put plants in the ground. We're always going to recommend, if we're putting a tree or shrub in the ground with our planting mix, that we would use a ratio of 1 part planting mix to 2 parts existing topsoil that we've just dug out of the ground to put that plant in the ground. Without going too deeply into planting, I mean, you'd be digging a hole about twice as big as your root ball. And like Peggy had mentioned earlier, when we're putting that plant in the ground, we do want to keep it a little bit higher so that we have a little bit of the top of that root ball is mountaining out of the ground as opposed to a valley. So water can sheet away from it instead of fill the valley. And then that empty space around our root ball is what we would mix 1 part planting mix, 2 parts existing topsoil. And then of course we need to water these plants in upon planting them. Planting mix is such a great product. I've used this many times to put plants in the ground, and it just works great.
Absolutely. And just one comment before we leave this precise planting thing is that when you create that, you said twice the size of the container plant.
That's correct.
It's better if you can rough up the edges rather than making straight down cuts. Particularly if you've got heavy clay, you can rough up those edges so that it's easier for those roots to go out in search of more territory.
Absolutely. It goes right back to us freeing that root ball, letting those roots be able to draw into the soil. And just like Peggy said, yeah, getting those edges a little bit roughed up, perfect for those roots to have something to bite into and establish that plant.
Right. Okay. Let's go on to another use for some of these products. Okay. A couple of weeks ago, I said little Clara was so excited to go to my neighbors next door that had created this fencing, created this incredible arbor that she was so excited to walk through and be able to pick some of the vegetables. This is all grown in raised beds. I think he has 5 of them in a row next to his house where it gets ample afternoon sun, and it has just been thriving. And let's go to the next picture. This is the first 2 sections that are still functioning, but the 3 downhill from this have finished, and he has added some products to that raised bed. And let's talk about those, Andy.
That sounds great, Peggy. So when we speak about raised beds, and if you're familiar or not, generally what people are going to be doing is using timbers or a block of material to build up really a large container. It is like a very large container permanently sitting on your property. And like anything, we need to have some great amendments in there for these plants to take off. And we've got some great product to talk about here. So this next one, this is called a raised bed mix. So it's about as straightforward as you can get. This is a mix made for a raised bed. And like we've spoken about, most people are putting vegetables in raised beds. You could put flowers or ornamentals in there. But these products, these next couple products we're going to show you are more geared towards growing vegetables, herbs, and like I said, flowers. But most people using their raised beds, it's going to be for vegetables.
And some of the things that are in this, I find that's very interesting because these bags are pretty straightforward.
They are. I think I'm going to make my baking a cake analogy right now, Peggy.
Okay.
When people ask about putting vegetables in the ground, and we will talk about several different products, some people can be overwhelmed with all of the products. If I could make an analogy to baking a cake, is you could go buy eggs, flour, butter, and you can make your own mix with all of those ingredients, or you could go to the store and buy a cake mix that's already ready to go. This is kind of what this would represent, is all of these ingredients in there to make everything very happy, and those vegetables take off. So this Coast of Maine, which makes a great variety of products that we sell here, is going to have a lot of great things inside of it that help our vegetables. Number one on our list is just a blend of enriched compost. We've got peat moss, biochar, worm castings, kelp meal, lobster meal, green sand, lime, and mycorrhizae. We're going to touch on some of these ingredients a little bit more than others. We're going to keep it somewhat general here, but this is just a great all-in-one. This is our cake mix right here. It's ready to go. We really wouldn't need to add much more than this. We could have some existing topsoil, of course, in that bed if we want, but through that top layer, we want something really nice with high nutrition and a lot of this content to just help our vegetables take off. Lots of energy it takes to get those vegetables growing.
Absolutely. Now, if you're talking about this cake mix,
Mm-hmm.
we have to stir a cake mix, don't we?
I think it's important to stir up all the ingredients.
So how do we stir it if we've got this big container is what it amounts to, right?
Yeah,
Working from the bottom.
that's right. I mean, we can till things in. We can
How about just a shovel?
a shovel, a trowel. Everybody could have a different size bed as well. So of course, if and I don't, but if I had a grand large bed, I might be using something mechanized. But there's nothing wrong with taking a hard rake or a shovel or trowel and just working this material in and softening it up. Similar to planting that tree in the ground with amendments, we want to work this material in there so that we don't have just stiff, hard clay that we're trying to plant in.
Well, basically, if we're thinking of these raised beds, I think of it as a really large container.
Absolutely.
And when I have so many questions asked that, may I reuse my container soil? And my answer is yes, absolutely. I like to put an additional, maybe 1/3 fresh soil when I'm planting, which I will do because now I've got to change out to my pansies and mums and other things. Okay, kale particularly. Okay, I've got to have kale going through the winter. But you must loosen that existing soil because it will have compacted over time. And you need to loosen that and work it in. And the same applies to your cake mix, that it needs to be worked into that existing thing. I'm not big on rototilling anymore, even if you've got a big garden space. I understand what you're saying about the ease of doing that. And if you had a really, really big one, you'd have to perhaps. But I try not to till anymore because it just brings up more weeds. But we have these two things. Now, into all of this, it has basically a lot of the things that plant needs to grow in this already. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But you certainly can use, and I did bring up the plantain. We won't talk about the acidifier yet, but this is the versatile product. I keep a large bag of this on hand at all times. And it's certainly, we're talking about all organic products here right now too.
Absolutely.
And this is totally all organic. And going into the wintertime, you don't want to fertilize anything heavily. The only thing you fertilize a lot is the lawn, okay?
That's right.
Because you don't want to force growth right now. So I love to use a couple of handfuls, depending on the size of the container, of this plantain also. Yeah.
And I'm going to second what Peggy says. I am a big fan of, as we're talking about baking cakes, even though we're talking about gardening, is it's follow the recipe. So this plant tone, more isn't more. You follow the recommendations on the bag, and it's going to do your plants just a whole lot of good. If you really want something to take off, you follow the recipe, you remind yourself about watering, and then you watch these beautiful plants growing.
That's right. And speaking of watching the beautiful plants growing, we've all enjoyed watching these beautiful plants growing. I really have enjoyed this year. You know, some years we do things better than others, and I think this was a pretty good one, you know.
Yes. Yeah, if anybody does or doesn't recognize this photo is the entrance to our garden center. And this was a planting we did for this season. And I would say it's probably one of my favorites that I've seen since I've been here, both with color, texture. It's great. Peggy, what do we have there? I see the creeping Jenny on the bottom. What's right above that?
On the top layer actually is a weeping blue atlas cedar, which is very horizontal. And so I thought, I'm going to follow that horizontal thing and see what happens. And so the layer in the back, which is getting to be my favorite coleus, it's that golden one that I can't even remember the name of right now. But anyway, and those were little 4.5-inch plants. But it is a coleus. And then the next layer is New Guinea impatiens. And actually there was a lighter tone in the background, but those coleus grew so well that you could no longer see that line, you know. And then I wanted some repetition. And so we put the creeping Jenny to trail out over the stone.
Now, Peggy, if I can ask you something quick, I feel like this area before we planted it was actually a pretty shallow area of material, and there was some root systems from our trees, and it wasn't a large depth of material to work with. Is that correct?
Absolutely, and this is a challenge for a lot of people, is that they do have existing tree roots. You don't want to destroy your tree roots. And so you have to be very careful with how you work with that. You don't want to go in and do a wholesale big planting where you dig 2 shovels deep to plant something. So we didn't do that. We used 4.5-inch plant material. And then if you will tell them absolutely my favorite product.
Am I looking at this one or this one?
Well, let's go this one first.
This one I got on top.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
But I said they're interchangeable.
That's right. So back to some of these individual ingredients, and I'm sorry if there's a glare on these plastic bags, but this is our Lobster Compost. So this is a compost made from lobsters. It is very nutritious, and it will say on the bag, but what we're doing here is revitalizes the soil for vegetables, flowers, lawns. This is just such a great way to add nutrition back to the soil as plants, vegetables, and any sort of plant materials in the soil. They're drawing from the nutrition that's currently there. As Peggy mentioned, seasonally, if we're putting new things in, it's a great time to then revitalize your soil. And this lobster compost, I mean, if that picture tells you any story, this stuff worked great in that area.
There were a couple of shovelfuls of this devoted to each 4.5-inch plant, and they were installed and kept watered properly. And I just can't believe, but I've had such success with this product in my vegetable garden. Also, if I'm making transplants, or even if I pull a row to plant seeds. I will put some of this down. It's remarkable. Those coleus in that bed did not receive any other fertilizer this season.
I mean, it's
It
beautiful.
took off, so I just was incredibly impressed. And all of these Coast of Maine products are fantastic. But we're going to talk about a few more of them too, Daniel. Let's
I
go.
was going to say, before we get too far away from that planting,
Yeah.
was that in the shade, or was that a sun planting?
It only gets morning sun.
Okay, I thought it looks like it was probably not.
Only morning sun.
Yeah, there's a decent amount of higher tree material that's creating shade in that area.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, we had a question on that. I wanted to get that addressed before we move too far away from this.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, anyway, that just shows if you get the right materials in there, what will happen.
That's right.
Yeah, and the next one. Yes, now there's another one to talk about. Now, is that the same one? That's it. Okay, I didn't remember that I'd had this. That's using it in the vegetable garden, but I also use the plant.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Awesome.
So that's another very versatile use. And I am just incredibly impressed with this product. Okay, let's go to the next one. Let's talk about, we've got a number of these Coast of Maine products. And to be honest with you, I'm just trialing some of them right now. You know, we have here at all three locations some of the most incredible horticulturists. They're just, I'm always thrilled when I go to the information counter, and it's rare that we can't identify or come up with what is this plant, because we have such diversity in our employees here, our horticulturists.
Absolutely.
And invariably, they all have a different slant or a different interest within that horticulture world. So that, for instance, with Terry downstairs, and I'm sure this is the case with the other two locations also, he can identify all the plants growing in the woods, I think. You know?
Absolutely, he can.
He's the one to go to if it's something really unusual. Terry has the answer. You know, it's great. But anyway, we do have to learn, and it's wonderful when we can do the hands-on thing, you know. But we learn from each other also, because no one person can do it all. I feel like I've spent, well, I know that I've spent my entire lifetime either in agriculture or horticulture, and I feel like what I've learned is not hardly even measurable.
There's always something new, and that's a good thing.
Yes. All righty, we were going to talk about the next, where we're talking about that coat. There we go. Yeah, this is where we need to discuss. That was where I wanted to do the rose thing. I don't think we got that in here, did we? We didn't get that additional picture.
Well, we're gonna
just tell you about it.
Yeah, this picture that you're seeing right now, this Coast of Maine yet again, who's carrying different products for us. Now the bag in the picture, of course, is labeled for tomatoes and vegetables, but this Coast of Maine's making a couple of products that we're utilizing here. Danny, if you could bring us up for a moment. What we don't have a picture of, but we'd love to share with you, is this is the Coast of Maine roses and flowers. So this is specifically more geared to roses. Peggy, do you want to speak to the roses and flowers at all?
Well, I'm not a rosarian at all. Okay, I have several roses. They never get sprayed. I'm just not good about spraying things. I'm not anti-chemical, but I'm very judicious use of chemicals. And so I think that this is going to be, I've tried this with my couple of roses that perform just beautifully for me. Are they perfect or not? I have one rose back there in that garden that is deer-proof, so to speak. Okay, it's got a little fence around it. Okay, that actually, when my neighbor sold his property, The rose was already a gift from his aunt, and it was probably 15 years old. And I have had it for almost 60 years.
You're
So
doing all
this
right with that
is
rose.
over 60 years old,
It's
and
amazing.
it's never been sprayed, and it blooms prolifically every spring. And I'm happy with it, you know. I don't have to worry if it's got a few holes in its leaves or whatever. But this, I think, is going to be invaluable to helping rejuvenate. Yeah, I'm constantly rejuvenating my soil. My soil is good because I've been working with it for so many years. But I am constantly adding and rejuvenating. Okay, and these two products are very, very good for that. I do. You know, I'm really sorry that I do have it. Yes, it is the next picture.
Mhm.
Okay, this is very important. Yeah, I think that this is very important because I a couple of years ago put in some new blueberry plants. I love blueberries. And I really I've gotten so much territory, I don't really take care of it the way I should. But there are a couple of things that it needs. It needs some acidifying because I brought in a soil sample and it was way too high. So now I've got to get that more acidic for those.
So just to reiterate, this next Coast of Maine product labeled acid loving plants. Not every plant is an acid loving plant. In fact, I'd say acid loving is more rare than the opposite. Would you say that's pretty much true?
It depends upon whether or not you're an azalea and rhododendron freak.
True. So if you've got a bunch of azaleas and rhododendrons, of course, these are the types of plants that want a higher acidity in the soil content. And the other product that I've also coupled with that is, once again, that Espoma that's making a wonderful variety of organic products, soil acidifier. It's labeled turns hydrangeas blue. Really what we're looking at is there's some hydrangeas that are pink and or blue. That's generally based upon the acidity, the pH of the soil. So people will come in and say, I've got a whole row of pink hydrangeas, but I always wanted them blue. What can I do? You know, working with an acid loving plant mix or a soil acidifier is going to help kind of open the highway of all that beautiful blue color to come in. What else likes acidic soil? Blueberries.
Blueberries particularly, and you do have to be careful with this because I do with this because my blueberries are back in my vegetable perennial garden. So I have to now, but they're all in a specific area. And that's the area that I'm going to use some of this soil and some of the acidifier, because it's all going to be slow change. But I think that by the time it's ready to put out its new growth next spring, that it will have altered that over a slow period of time. And I will double check and have the soil tested and see if that has happened. Okay. But
great.
It's very important if you really want blueberries and some of these things to get that soil tested, and you can bring a sample in and we can test it for you. Just the acidic thing. We
That's
can't
right, the
do some of the
pH.
other things, you know, we can't do that. But let's go to the next one, because here again, I hope that we are clarifying the uses of some of this. All right, I put this one back in. I mean, we both said this is one of our most versatile cake mixes.
Peggy's used this for many years. I myself have used this next product in the picture, Bumper Crop. What a great cake mix. Please don't make a cake with it. Make a beautiful vegetable garden with this. Like the raised bed mix, we're going to see a similar cast of characters in terms of ingredients: worm castings, lobster and crab shells, sphagnum peat moss, dehydrated manure, aged bark.
Right.
Bumper Crop is just I've met so many people who have had such great luck with it.
Right.
I've used it in a raised bed setting. I've
Yeah.
used it to grow tomatoes in containers.
Right. Yeah.
It's just great. And back to revitalizing soil. We have seasonal change. Sure, grab a couple bags of bumper crop and work that in.
Right.
It's
Now,
amazing.
bear in mind that it has the dolomitic lime in it. So this is not something you put around your blueberries and your azaleas.
Yeah, when we to touch on that last bit with soil acidity, so hydrangeas, blueberries, and some of the other things we spoke to, want a more acidic soil. What lime is doing is it's neutralizing that acidity. So I know we're not talking about lawn care, but your lawn wants different acidity than your azaleas and rhododendrons and things like that. So naturally over time, rainwater can slowly acidify things. Lime is how we neutralize that. So a lot of these mixes are going to have a little lime just to counteract the natural acidity that can occur, to keep the plants that don't want the acidity happy and going in the right direction.
And I don't worry about this too much, and I'm not out there checking that soil. I did for those blueberries because they're not thriving, and I knew they needed to be acidic. I can look at my azaleas and I know they're fine, and I don't have a terribly acidic soil in my woods. It is a little bit more certainly than my lawn, which is 6.3, which is perfect for that. But you can look at your plants, and if they're thriving, you don't need to worry about it, you know?
That's right.
So all my azaleas are pretty happy, okay? And I'm very happy with the color of my hydrangeas. I have one that's multicolored, and that's okay, you know? But, you know, just bear in mind that this, when it does contain a fair amount of lime, you don't want to put that on the acidic loving stuff. Okay.
That's right.
And we've got another product. There are a couple of products here to talk about. And actually, you don't have to bring up that particular picture because we've got these just to talk about the versatility of all these. You know, we're trying to explain what is in these various bags and what we have used it for, or others have. But there's some other things here that we haven't discussed.
What I'm showing everybody now is our premier organic garden soil. So similar to our bumper crop and similar to the raised bed mix, this is a great organic product to grow vegetables. And I would say, I think almost virtually everything, yes, that we have shown you so far is organic. I prefer something organic for something I intend on eating. I just think it's a great way to feel good about what you're doing with these vegetables and produce that you may be growing. Organics is, if it was up to me, is the way to go for all of that. Yeah, we've been carrying Premier for a little bit now. We've got it in great supply, and this is another really good mix for vegetable gardening.
Well, we're told so much now about, I'm not a soil scientist. I would love to know more about our soils, really. But we're talking about trees talking to each other, and how all of these roots are intertwined, and all the organics are working together. So I feel really good when I use an organic mix. Every time I plant something, even though most of my soil is very good, every time I plant something, I add one of these organics. Okay. And as I said, a lot of them are very, very interchangeable, you know.
Absolutely.
And the other one that we haven't talked about, but we do sell a lot of, is good to, I'm sure you're out there watching it go out of here, and you see a lot of this, right?
We've sold a bag or two, or 3 or 4 or 5. Merryfield topsoil. It's also listed on top here, composted soil conditioner. We touched a little bit on the thick red clay that's in the area. Not that that our soil in Northern Virginia doesn't have a lot of great things in it, mineral content and other things. But once again, it is hard to dig in and work in. And if you're planting lots of things, that's why these amendments are great. This topsoil that we're selling here can both be a great product to grade an area. You have low spots, high spots, and you want a nice smooth flat setting that you want to touch up. Topsoil will hold that structure very well, do a good job. But our topsoil also has great compost content, and that's what's given nutrition, whether it's leaves broken down and other plant material, it's broken down into nutritious
Right.
compost.
It is more of a compost. And speaking of compost, let's bring up this last slide that I have here. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so this may not be too fancy. When you're my age, you can't necessarily pound things in and make it look perfect. Okay, I do not haul away my leaves, and I have a lot of leaves that come down. And certainly the leaves have to be gotten off the lawn regularly, but I leave a lot of them in the beds. Okay, I like all of the pathways to be cleared and some of the beds to be cleaned of the leaves so they don't get too thick. But I do try to compost, and wherever possible, if you can run your lawnmower over it and shred them, it's better. I can't always do that, but I love, and this is a little tighter than it is most of the time, okay? At the end of the season, most of the time it's just a great big pile of layered things. It would be the leaves that largely are not threaded. I'm going to try to thread more of them this year. With the straw in the layer, what does the straw do? It helps to aerate that because it needs air movement in it. And then through the summer, I add the grass clippings, okay? And I read so many things. We can come away from the picture now. I read so many things about sieving this to make it fine, or not using it until it's broken down a lot. But I've never worried about that. When it's really, as you saw it in this picture, it's pretty well decomposed in most instances, and it can go back on my beds, and then the falling leaves can be there. I don't put it so thickly that my bulbs and things can't come through, but that's how I rejuvenate my soil every year, is with that compost.
Great way to use material that a lot of people could put in a bag and put on their curbside. Peggy is using these things to make a beautiful, nutritious compost that she can use to enrich the soil, whether it's a raised bed setting, simply in the ground planting. What a great way to just keep using things that some people might deem as waste.
Now, if you've got a small area, like David Yost has a tumbler, okay? A tumbler would do me no good, because that would be a minuscule amount of my leaves. And you may have just a small area, but what I was trying, you can be much tidier with your little fence than me. And you can do in the back of a border, or where it's slightly hidden, you can do this, and turning it periodically is a really good idea. Okay. I have so many that I don't turn mine very much. So it's a slow process for me, but that's okay. I don't mind that. But to kind of wrap up this part of the program, that last product, not everybody can compost. And some people don't have the leaves, and some people don't choose to do that. So there is that last versatile product that
Back to the
yes, that I highly recommend. And here again, this is a very, for all of those people who put their leaves on the curb, they get collected and they go to this place and they get composted and they get churned. They have all the additives in it, and it comes to you as a cake mix.
That's great. Yeah, I think, everybody can have a different setting, different type of a residence, different amounts of room. So it's really what works for the individual.
Right.
Peggy's, got her stakes with her fence and putting her leaves. And as we mentioned, David, one of our horticulturists, is using a tumbler, a composting barrel, if you will, that tumbles and rolls and stirs. And that's what works for David on his property. At my little condo right now, I cannot have a compost pile. So I'm gonna buy a bag of leaf grow. That's what's gonna work for me.
Right.
So all great
This
things.
is a wonderful soil additive too. It helps to keep down the weeds. I don't always work things into the soil because I don't have to. The worms can do that for me. And when you don't, it helps to keep down the weeds, helps to hold some moisture in the ground. But if you want it to be an even tidier look, you can always put a little mulch on top. And I happen to favor the Virginia fine, not Virginia bark.
Yeah, Virginia
Okay,
fines.
okay.
Yeah. So
I like those best. However, if you've got a steep slope, they don't work very well.
they can run away from you.
Yeah, they can. So I think we've covered all this pretty well. Is there anything you wanted to add to this?
I think we have gotten through our products. Leaf grow, so versatile. Bumper crop, wonderful product. I've got a lot of personal use with that, and have fun with it. Come in here, take a look at all those Coast to Maine products,
Right.
and get going on roses or azaleas. And if something doesn't work out, that's great. We can move on to something new, put something new in. I mean, I love it.
That's great. Okay, that kind of wraps it up, guys, for us. If there are any questions that we have, Sally?
Got some questions. So before we get started, just going to let everybody know, please send in any questions you have. We will get to as many as we can. If we can't get to you guys today, you're going to hit reply on that confirmation email that had your link to access the class. That comes to me and I'll make sure Peg or Andy get it. You can also, of course, call our stores or come in and visit. But it is easy to get in touch with us if we can't get to everybody's questions today. All right, so with that, let's dive in. The first question we have is, so I asked for some clarification on this, so I'm not totally sure, but this person is asking for plant-based amendments for lawns and beds. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that means only plant matter or if it's more of an organic.
I mean, I can speak to that a little bit. I mean, the leaf grow is absolutely plant-based, as the name of it suggests. It is a compost made from leaves. A lot of the mixes for vegetable gardens, the bumper crop and the raised bed mix, is going to have a mix of ingredients that aren't only going to be plant-based. For example, like crab meal or even the lobster compost. Of course, that's coming from from an organism that is an animal, not a plant. But plant-based, yeah, the leaf grow is great. I'm wondering if there's any other strictly plant-based, but it's the only one that comes to mind.
Comes to mind for me,
Yeah.
because some of them have peat moss. We're getting a little bit away from the peat moss and going to some core and some other things. But it may be a while before they get completely away from peat moss because it's so versatile. But as far as I know, the leaf grow would be the only one that answered that question.
And these things are replicating what Mother Nature is doing naturally. So as we have life and death in the world, whether that's plants, animals, things are breaking down, decomposing. That is what's bringing all this beautiful nutrition for the next generation of life. Yeah, all great things.
Yeah, and they're using all this lobster stuff. Is the throwaway parts anyway.
That's right.
Grinding up all that expensive meat.
I hope not, because I like lobster.
Oh gosh. I have family from Maine, so we're big into lobster. All right, are worm castings a good choice for lawns or for use in garden beds?
I mean, I think worm castings are great everywhere. We're talking about whether you can get that to naturally occur. For example, Peggy's compost area, I guarantee you, if you stir that a little bit, is full of worms. They know all that nutrition is there. they're eating through it, and their casting that they're putting out is a wonderful, great product. Naturally, you can also buy worm castings as an individual ingredient as well. It can be utilized anywhere.
Okay, good.
It depends upon how much the expense of it, as far as using worm castings on the lawn. Certainly they'll work anywhere, but you have to ask about the expense of it,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. What product would you all recommend to use with planting bulbs?
Oh, any of those.
Yeah.
Working it down, yes.
All right.
Anything that can improve your soil, and we mentioned some favorites there,
Mhm.
Okay. Would you recommend putting the Coast of Maine a soil acidifier around azaleas that have just been established?
I don't see anything wrong with that at all. It should only enrich and yeah, that acid loving, great for azaleas, rhododendrons. We
It
spoke
would
to
be a
blueberries,
plus, in my
hydrangeas.
opinion.
Yeah,
It's not going to be strong enough to overdo it, and so it's a great additive, would be fine,
Got
and
it.
once they are established, maybe next spring, you might want to take a soil sample in that area and see what it is, what the pH is.
absolutely.
Okay. And we have soil pH testers at our plant clinic. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can come in and buy one. We do have at our Fair Oaks location, when available, we have a pH tester here. It's a probe that sits into about a cup of moist soil,
Right.
and you can see the pH. You can also come to our plant clinic here, and there is a mail out that I believe goes through Virginia Tech that is like a
Yes.
complete
Okay.
soil analysis, and that's going to give you a
Yeah.
very detailed breakdown of what is in your soil, not just pH, but a wide spectrum of what is in your soil. And if any of that looks like Egyptian hieroglyphics when you get those results back, you can absolutely bring it into our plant clinic and have one of our experts navigate that for you.
Yeah, that's good. That would be me. Okay, next question. Do I understand correctly? Okay, so do we put these soil builders into the soil in the fall, not the spring?
Yeah, like Peggy's saying, anytime. So in the spring, we may be planting certain vegetables that are growing in that season. Great time to revitalize that soil and put these amendments in.
Right.
Peggy can't live with kale over the cool season, so she is going to put some additives in when she's putting her kale in as well, which is in the fall. So yeah, there's no really bad time when it's time to plant any given vegetable or any plant material you get. Absolutely put some amendment in there.
Okay, great. Good information. Okay, next question. This is about compost. Do you add Peg, do you add vegetable and eggshell food scraps into your backyard compost?
I think that could be highly recommended. Certainly you don't want to put any weed seeds in there. So I don't recommend that while you're weeding, that you throw that stuff in, because it's got weed seeds in it. And you want to keep it, you're going to get some airborne seeds in it, but not many. I'd certainly say all of those things are good. Do I do that? I don't. Why? Because my compost heap is in the South 40 and I don't make that trip back there. The wonderful thing is these neighbors that I've showed some of their pictures, and they're doing it in their raised beds. They're constantly doing that into the edges of their beds, because it's just out the back door, so to speak, and very easy for them to do. But you don't want to put any product in there that is going to cause an animal to go after it. Okay, you certainly don't want any bones or meat products or anything like that. Okay,
sounds good. Yeah, we and I did send this link out to everybody. If for anybody who wants to get into a really deep dive in compost, Gary Gidier from McGill's did a composting at home class for us a few months back. So I sent the link out to that, and I'm happy to share it with anybody.
Good.
Yeah, who wants to like really get in depth on compost, because I know there's a lot to it. All right, next. Oh, this is okay. This is a comment. So we have Diane usually mows the leaves in the fall and then puts them directly into the gardens for the winter.
That's terrific.
Good idea. Yep. That works. All right, next question. If mulching with leaf grow, would you do this in the spring, then mulch with shredded hardwood in the fall?
So, you know, I wouldn't necessarily consider leaf grow a mulch, if that's what they were getting at, but absolutely is an amendment. There's nothing wrong with mulching right after you amend. Depending on what you're putting in the ground is what may affect how you mulch. For example, if I put a tree in the ground and it was we'll just call that an ornamental bed, and I want that bed to look nice and aesthetically please me, I would put mulch in. I would be careful not to push mulch to the collar of that tree or to the very the bottom of the trunk, if you will. I wouldn't mound mulch up there. I'd want aeration and flow, but there's nothing wrong with putting mulch down, making something look pretty, and it also will help insulate root systems. I think that can just be done as needed if that's your intent, if that's what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I do sometimes put the leaf grow down and my compost down, and I do that, okay, because it's just an ongoing thing, and it could happen at any time of the year, doesn't matter. And sometimes if you wanted to tidy it, that's when I top dress it with a little of the mulch. Okay, now let me make one quick statement about mulching. I am obsessed with growing things from seed. I have been for many years. I love the old-fashioned gardens. I love my foxglove, my larkspur, and I could go on my poppies, or not the orientals, the little yellow poppies, orange poppies, whatever, California poppies, okay, and other varieties. And my Queen Anne's lace, okay, which can take over, you know, it can, but I abide by that because I love it, you know. What are some of the other things? Anyway, I know when they drop their seeds, which is this time of the year for sure. And I also go out and harvest some of those seeds just in case. So if you have an area where you have columbine or something that you know is going to reseed there, I don't mulch heavily on top of that right now. I try to mulch before that they drop their seeds, or I wait until late winter probably and mulch once they are up.
And that's given us the best chance for those seeds to take hold.
That's right.
Oh, that's okay.
So that is the only time that I think about when do I mulch. When I know that that's a specific area that I want that reseeding, I don't mulch right now when they're dropping their seeds.
Okay. All right. We've got one more question, so we'll just go ahead and stick it out for that last one, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay. So this Elizabeth has old compacted soil with big U roots matting the soil. If you want to amend, she can't get a shovel really deep because of all the roots. What do you do with that? How do you start amending the soil in that area?
Back to our focus.
Yeah, so I mean, kind of like our entryway into our garden center, we had a similar scenario where there's root systems and very shallow. We thus, instead of digging and working in, we gently built the area up. Now, once again, we don't want to mound things against the base of any plant material, but an established tree, you absolutely can add a little material over those roots. We added lobster compost, and just added some material. So instead of thinking we have to work down in there, we simply added a little bit more material so we could plant all of those beautiful plants in that area.
Or if you've got an area, and here again, I'm not big into disturbing any more of those roots as necessary, okay? Certainly you can periodically dig a hole and move some roots aside if you're planting something deep. But also bear in mind that if you've got an area where you have serious root situations, you can also create a sitting area and use container plants, okay? Sally, there is one thing before we close. Do we have a minute?
Yeah, we can take a minute.
Okay. I feel like today was a little different than we normally do. And I feel that it was important for us to understand some of this, but particularly to explain some of it. And we're always interested in knowing what information do you need? What do you want? And as I said, we have so many wonderful horticulturists here with so much to share and such diversity. I would love it if any of you can take the time to respond and let us know how you felt about this kind of program and if it was beneficial to you.
Thanks, Peg. Yeah, and I know we talked about this before the class. So we used to send out regular surveys, and now we're going to go ahead and send one out after this class just to give you guys a chance to talk about what you're interested in hearing about, what you guys think of these classes that really get into kind of the practical elements of planting and things like that. So I will be sending that out with the coupon and the recording. So keep an eye out for that. And we do appreciate any feedback you guys give us. We try to take that into account and offer classes on those topics. So we appreciate that. Peg and Andy, thank you so much. Just really glad to have you guys. I took notes on this for my own plants. So, oh, thank you, Beverly. Yeah, we're getting some nice comments for you guys. So, I will send out all of that information tomorrow, and thank you guys, and thank you everybody for coming to watch this class. And I just hope everybody has a great afternoon. So
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
thanks, guys.